to invite Owen Engelmann to please come on up, and he will present to the next recognition. Thank you. Thanks, Owen.
Thank you. Betsy Primm is deserving of this award in my father's name, and few have ever been more suited for receiving it. My father was a magical teacher of children, a genius of instruction and learning, and one of the most prolific producers of quality work in the last century. Despite his extensive professional obligations, one of the characteristics that set him apart was his willingness to help. If someone asked for help with a child in academic or behavioral trouble, my father would say, "I'll do it." If a teacher needed help with her classroom, my father would say, "I'll do it." If a school or district was in needed desperate help to improve their outcomes, my father would say, "I'll do it." Or even if his university needed courses created and taught for a doctoral program in special ed, my father would say, "I'll do it." Time and time again, like my dad, Betsy's response to the needs of children and those committed to helping them has been, "I'll do it." When a family that recently emigrated from Albania asked her to teach their son Victor to read, Betsy said, "I'll do it." When Beaufort, Georgia was having a literacy crisis and they needed a tutoring program set up for their kinders, Betsy said, "I'll do it." When the tutoring program needed someone to train the high school tutors, Betsy said, "I'll do it." When Beaufort discovered that their children needed more language skills and their teachers needed training in language for learning, Betsy said, "I'll do it." When the homeschoolers in Georgia needed instruction in Teach Your Child to Read, phonics, language for learning, language for thinking, phonics math, and connecting math concepts, Betsy said, "I'll do it." And she did. Betsy had not learned about DI until 3 years before her retirement. After she first taught Victor using Teach Your Child to Read, her outcomes from replying, "I'll do it," skyrocketed. Betsy has changed the trajectory of countless children, many of whom are now successful adults. More than a quarter century after her first experience with DI, she is still using it to help kids, empower parents, and positively impact the educational system. Victor, by the way, graduated from Harvard University. Betsy at her core is a kind, dignified, and gracious person. I've never heard her call someone a name, even butt heads whose decisions were hurting kids and I truly feel deserve to be labeled with an expletive or two. Her criticisms are uniformly oriented towards giving people the benefit of the doubt. Betsy would say something like, "Owen, you have to remember that they don't know what they don't know, and they're doing their best." The dignity and graciousness with which she treats people, coupled with her determination and passion for helping children, has enabled her to make inroads for effective educational practices that others haven't been able to make. I use the term passion begrudgingly. Passion without technical expertise makes you an enthusiast. Betsy is more than an enthusiast. Like my father, she is a prolific producer of positive performance. With great honor and humility, I'd like to introduce my dear friend, colleague, And this year's winner of the Siegfried Engelmann Excellence in Education Award, Betsy Primm.
Oh, and you're a little tall here, man. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Typical of Brian, he helps all the time. Well, I, who made my living with words, simply have no words to express how grateful, how the feeling of humility I have, and how deeply honored I am to receive this award that bears Siegfried Engelmann's name. I was fortunate enough to meet him, even though it was at the end of my career. Owen took me to get a beer with Zig. Now, I have to tell you, I'm from the South, and Southerners don't spend a whole lot of time drinking beers. We drink hard liquor. But I'll tell you this, I drank that beer. I could not believe that I was so fortunate to meet him. And everybody, this is 20 years ago, folks, everybody was so gracious and accommodating and open. I'd never seen a convention or a group like that, ever. And I'd been to plenty before I came here. So I say thank you from my heart for this award. But I have a couple of other things I want to say. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever seen a little box turtle? You know what I'm talking about? A box turtle sitting on top of a 3-foot stump. Well, if you do, you know that that turtle didn't get there by itself. And I am very much like that turtle. I certainly didn't get here tonight by myself. And I want to acknowledge some of the people who helped me enormously, and some who still are. Let me go to the East Coast first. That's home for me, okay? So, you know, come on down, y'all, in Atlanta. But the teachers, the children, the high school tutors, the administrators, the principals, the directors of programs were so helpful, and without them, I would never have been able to go to the schools. They wouldn't have let me in. They said, keep moving, honey, keep moving. But they did. I have to thank my, I was going to say denominator. That's not what I meant. Nominator, who wrote a fantastic nomination, and I give you my word, if you had read it blind, you might have ended up giving this award to Funnis and Pinnell or Lucy Calkins. I'm glad you didn't. You know, she wrote a marvelous nomination, and I'm so grateful for the people who wrote in for me, particularly the parents. Because obviously they have the most at stake, and they didn't have to do it, but they did. Now, I am not anywhere near as nice as Owen indicated. As a matter of fact, my nickname in school was Attila the Hen. So that'll give you an idea of who I really am. Now let me move to what we call the left coast here. The left coast, yeah. If you hadn't heard it before, you've heard it now, okay? Here, I have gotten incredible help over the years from the folks in Eugene. Owen Engelmann was the first to take me under his wing, took me to get that beer, and as I set up programs in Georgia, I called him over and over asking really stupid questions, and he never indicated. I was certainly glad I couldn't see his face. You know? what in the world? But he never indicated that. He was kind, he was helpful, and he was always there when I needed him for something. So I'll never forget that. Kurt came to Georgia and looked at programs down there at a very tough time for him. He came and he saw the high school tutors using phonics at that time, which was wonderful. Now, I just say an aside, I used high school tutors because that was cheap labor. It was. I paid them $2.50 a child. So that's $5 an hour, right? No time, no pay for getting set up or cleaning up. You got paid for working with this kid. So we could afford that, and we did. Kurt was also helpful and gracious and kind. And I looked to him when Owen wasn't there, or he'd had enough of me. He sent me to he sent me to Kurt, and Kurt picked up the trash. The other person I certainly want to acknowledge is Brian Whitman. Brian was here organizing the conference 20 years ago, which was my first venture over here, and he also has always been helpful and gracious. And when he came to Atlanta, and he does to help train, he always gave me some of the extra CDs, which of course we can't use now, but you all remember the CDs that were with corrective reading on the sounds? Well, he sent me a bunch, and I was able to, now Brian, if that gets you in trouble all these years later, I'm sorry. But that was wonderful because I could teach my tutors, both high school and adult, how to pronounce the sounds correctly. And they had that CD, and they also knew that if they came in, and I tested everyone separately, that Attila the hen would have their head. So that was extremely helpful. And Lord knows, I owe more than I can ever say to Phyllis Haddocks. It was Phyllis's book, Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons, that has been my North Star in the implementation of my school programs. That's what I did first, that's what I did with the tutors, and that's what I still do along with phonics. But I particularly do that when I tutor. I use that book. I cannot thank you enough. It is, in my opinion, the best thing since bottled beer. And even though I don't drink bottled beer, most people do, so it's wonderful. If it hadn't been, does everybody know Phyllis? Stand up. If it hadn't been for Phyllis, for these last 15 years, I would probably have been a greeter at Walmart. There's no question. And Phyllis, I want to say, if you can, Phyllis, get some tapes, some podcasts, so that people who live on my side of the map, and thousands of them do, can watch and see you and Susan in expert teaching. I hope you'll do that, because I know you're spring chicken. But the time will come when you won't want to do this anymore. So I urge you to think of that. Let me end with two, three, I'll be quick, Brian. Brian's giving me the hook, I see it with his eyes. But I want to mention 3 vignettes. They're short. I know I speak slowly because I'm Southern, but the vignettes are short. The first one is about Thomas. Thomas was from a white, middle-class, Brian, would you mind giving me that water unless you drive me up on purpose? Thank you. White, middle-class family, thank you, who could afford anything they needed. But Thomas had a number of problems. He lived close by, and so I tutored him for free because I didn't want them to sue for their money back if I messed him up. So one day I said to him, Thomas, you are a star bicycle rider. And his mother, fool that she was, said in front of him, no, Thomas isn't a star at anything. I was, we'd say in the South, gobsmacked. I was horrified and too stupid myself to know what to do. Well, Thomas and I got through 100 easy, and it took us a while, but we got there, and he was accepted at one of our most prestigious schools for learning problems in Atlanta. About 6 weeks after he had started school, he came home and he said to his father, Dad, I am the goodest reader in my class. Thomas had become a star in reading. I made sure his mother knew that. The second quick story is about a middle-class family, African-American, with a little boy named Tavon. We call him Tay. Tay started kindergarten, and he had a year in hell. He spent most of his time in the principal's office, and he was always in trouble. It's because he didn't know the alphabet, and so acting out seemed like a good thing to do. And he did. The next year, by God's grace, he was put in a class with a woman who had trained in Appleton, Wisconsin, in DI maybe 25 years ago as part of her college internship, and so she knew DI. But she didn't know 100 easy lessons. So they tell you you can only do what they tell you to do. Well, any fool can make a rule, any fool can mind it. And so I met with her privately and her paraprofessional, and they taught Tay to read with 100 easy lessons, and he blossomed. The teacher wanted to put him up for the Wayne Carnine Award, and the school, the principal said no, because they knew that the mother would write a letter for the award. I can't remember what was required, but they knew it would happen. And they didn't want anybody to know what a terrible kindergarten year he had. I was amazed. So I said, Donna, that's the teacher, give me all the information. I will nominate him. To heck with the principal. I don't work in this system. So she gave me the information, did a scrapbook, and we nominated him under my name, and he won. He won. Now, on a personal note, when I came back, he told his mother and father that they needed to add a room to their house. Well, they said, Tay, why? And he said, well, we need to have Miss Primm, I think he said, we need to have her come live with us. Well, they were amazed. As a matter of fact, when I heard about it, I was surprised. Remember now, this is an African-American family in an area of Georgia that's very white. And if I had been living with that family, it would have been noticed. When I heard about this, I said I was surprised. When the family got the whole picture, they were astounded. He insisted, but luckily, the military, the father was career military, transferred him and the whole family to Iowa. And that was the end of my room at his house. And the last vignette I'll give you is much shorter. There's a little girl, African-American, who was obviously at the lowest rung of the socioeconomic ladder. She came in, her other kids, and there were a lot of African-American kids. They had beads in their hair, they had ribbons. That's a big thing. She had a couple of clips. Her hand-me-down clothes had been handed down many times before they got to her. She couldn't read, and she was very shy. Well, she got a good tutor, and 100 easy which wasn't so easy, but she did it. And when she finished, she came to the teacher, and what we had them do, if you know the book, we had every child, when they finished, read the last story. It's about a tiger with two coats. The last story to the teacher who was not involved in the training. And so, if they didn't do well, then they got back and had to, back up, but everybody worked at it. She read it very well, and we gave her her little certificate, and in a voice, the softest voice you can ever imagine. She looked kind of out the window. She didn't really look at us, but she said, "Now I can help somebody else." I will never. I shall never forget it, because she's the kind of child that would be overlooked. I mean, honestly, you would overlook her, but that was her heart, and now she could help somebody else. Why do I tell you these stories? Because they cut to the very heart of our work. When all is said and done, being from Georgia, which is the shiny buckle of the Bible Belt, I firmly believe that education, like salvation, happens one by one by one. Thank you so much.